um, comic relief at this conference. Um, I had a whole different story prepared, but powers that be said no, so I had to come up with something new. So this is what I could come up with last minute. Ghost stories of a SysAdmin. So this is my first time speaking, and I'm really scared because I'm in a security conference, and I am not exactly a security person. I'm more of a general IT SysAdmin, general knowledge person. I should take the CISSP because, it's kind of what I am. I know a lot, or I know a little bit of a lot of things. Just barely learned how to do presentations. All right. My name is Kent Schaeffer, and just a little bit about me. I've been in California, Hawaii, Arizona, now Utah. Utah's the best place so far. Until Hawaii gets snow. Maybe they do, I don't know. But until then, I'll be here for a while. So I've worked in various industries, IT work, going from desktop support, and I started working even before computers, writing down log entries in a hotel. And in fact, I used to work at the Marriott that used to be called Seven Peaks Resort Hotel. Does anybody remember that? Yeah, good times. Anyway, so I've been around, and I've been trying to, learn more about security. I started coming to conferences the last couple of years, and so this is how I enter, by speaking. Welcome to the world. Anyway, so I just have just a handful of stories to tell. Again, more for comic relief and just, somewhere to sit and listen to stories. So hopefully I can span this long enough that it'll last the 25 minutes. So we've always, heard the basic stories of, someone innocuously sending a 10 meg file instead of to one person or even their group or department, but sending it out to everyone in the company and bringing the email servers down for a day. I think we've actually had that happen once. It didn't bring down the entire system, but it brought down a cluster of servers at Wells Fargo. So that was fun. Or no one could send or receive an email message for about 4 hours. So that was cool. Another typical story. So you're the sysadmin, or you're the new hire person, and so you've got this army of new hires coming in, and HR says, "Oh, we can wait until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, noon, before we give out these IDs. No one will notice, right?" And so you've got to entertain a bunch of people out in the lobby for a few hours. That's always fun. If you ever worked in a data center or operations center, and you're rotating backups, or a server crashes, and you've got to restore for backup. You've got the vendor out rebuilding the server with the newbie operator, and he somehow crashes the hard drives on the new server and corrupts the only backups available for that server, and you get to spend the next 2 weeks rebuilding. That's always fun. All right. Now we go to the full stories. Some of these are mine, and some of them I've collected from friends and coworkers. I am an avid Mac fan, and I'll say that publicly. But this story starts out, local religious college. I think it was a Lutheran college out east. This music teacher is given this nice Mac, I think it was a G5 tower, So it's a, it's a pretty nice, powerful machine. It works for, a great long time. Then all of a sudden, the user keeps calling the help desk several times. Hey, this thing is loud, and I think it's overheating. Something's wrong. Keeps calling, and they go through, basic troubleshooting steps. Nothing they do seems to come up with anything. They can't find anything wrong. And the help desk is overwhelmed, so they just kind of blow it off for a while. The calls taper off, and they stop coming for about a week. All of a sudden, they get this urgent call. Hey, I can't start my MacBook, or I can't start my computer. Something's going on. I can't start it at all. I push the button, and I hear a sound or something, but nothing turns on. Come to find out, the user had opened up the computer case and put foam blocks to block the fans, and eventually melted the CPU. That was a sad day. So the moral of that story is lock your computer cases before you give them to the user, and instruct them, or maybe listen to them the first time they call in to replace the fans. All right, this dates back a while, so Windows NT days. I was lucky. I worked for this company that was building new offices in Hong Kong. So I went out. It was a brand new install. They had a nice office with about 50 employees, and then another little warehouse location with maybe about 10 employees out there. In the main office, they had a server, and they were upgrading to Windows NT from 95, I think. So I got to play with the Chinese version of Windows NT. That was kind of cool. So when I got there, everything was fine. The server was actually built with Windows 10 server. I was like, great. Several of the computers had already been reimaged. So I had like a whole month to just reimage, maybe a couple dozen more workstations, make sure the printers were working, and just make sure, they had applications on there, make sure everything was working, and train this new support person that was from Singapore. So we're working along, we're getting things going. A few days in, we get some calls and complaints from some of the team members, or some of the employees there in the office, saying, hey, one of the later employees, so there were several employees already logged in the morning, and the later ones came in and said, I can't log in. And it says I can't connect to the server. Or people that were logged in saying, I can't print, or I can't connect to this, the server shared folder. What's going on? So we look, and we do a little research, and we find out, well, the software vendor that installed Windows, or the Windows NT server, had installed the MSDN version. And if you're not familiar with the MSDN version, it limits you to 10 connections to the server. So you've got 10 users doing something, either logging in, connecting to a file server or file share, or connecting to the printer. And so after 10 people were logged in, the 11th person would get knocked off. So we had to rebuild the server, and brought them down for a couple days. So the moral of the story there is, don't trust your local software vendor. I'm not racist. I'm not going to be racist and say don't trust your local Chinese software company. Just don't trust your local software company. Make sure that they give you the correct license ahead of time. All right, this one was a fun one. So I worked for Honeywell Aerospace as a U.S. citizen contractor, and we were working on I think it was IBM WebSphere on some what was it? IBM AS400s or something like that. Anyway, we had some Indian counterparts that they weren't given the access to the servers. They couldn't log in. They had to use some, I'm afraid to say it, PC Anywhere or something like that. I can't remember what it was, to remote control over my machine and do what they were supposed to. I thought that was really hokey, and I felt really uncomfortable, especially when one of the Indian guys, he was like, I want to look at the cron tab to look at the scheduled jobs to see what's going on. And so I was like, okay, cron tab -E. He starts typing cron tab -R and hits enter right before I could say no, 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 or stop him. And so it wiped out the cron tab. So the server had no more scheduled jobs. I had a weird feeling about this employee, and so I actually backed up the cron files a few days earlier. So I saved the day, but moral of that story is just make sure you have enough backups and don't ever trust other employees. Not even yourself sometimes. Now this was just kind of a funny, dumb story. So again, I was a contractor. I think it was back in the day when they had Hollywood Video and then the accompanying video game store. We were doing some retail updates, and they were going through a retail system update. So I got all their retail workstations upgraded, did their hardware upgrades, cleaned up the cabling, made sure things were looking good. It was just an in-between job, so I was, just whatever. On my way home, I get this call. Well, actually, before I left, I was like, this network is kind of slow. There are about half a dozen workstations, and it just seemed really slow. So I called my boss and I said, hey, the install's done. Everything looks fine except for the network. It seems kind of slow. He's like, do what you think is right, and I don't think anything's going to happen. But come to find out, on my way home, he gives me a call and said, hey, the users from this location call in, and it looks like the router just died. And so I'm like, oh, great. But we're talking about the whole situation and how to fix it. And so I pull over off the highway because I'm a guy, so I can't multitask, talk technical stuff, and drive at the same time. I have to keep reminding my wife, by the way, that that's the case. That I can't talk to her about life in general and drive, like she always likes to do. Anyway, so I pull over and we're talking, and he's like, well, why don't you just go down to the local Best Buy and turn around. But I think he had the other support people on the other call, and they're like, yeah, it's totally down. It's, they're not going anywhere. They can't do any transactions. And so I had to go and, so I was supposed to go and pick up a router. Well, before I could pull out, this officer comes and just knocks on my window. I'm like, I'm still on the phone with my boss. And so I go, hold on, boss. I've got someone on, I've got this police officer. He's like, what? Trying to get information from me. I'm like, hold on. And so I talk to the officer, and, again, I'm like really flipping out because I don't know what's going on. Anyway, it was just a funny story because, I was like, hi, officer, I'm talking to my boss before I need to turn around. He's like, well, you're not turning around on this highway because, it's a one-way lane, one-way highway, and you have to turn around. I was like, yeah, on the next exit. Didn't get it. He thought I was going to try to turn around. Sad story, if you've ever been in Arizona, they had some they had some of those speed stations. You know, they used to have like the big cameras where if you sped up too fast, then you know the cameras would just take a picture of you, and then you get a nice photo, nice selfie in the mail, saying, "Hey, you went too fast." And I think at one time they told about this one up in Scottsdale. There's this one driver who went about 104 miles an hour, they think, because it didn't capture how fast they went, and it was a blurry picture of a car. So if you speed really fast, then they won't capture. All right, I came up with this one last minute. Just remembered this one, so I don't have any fun photos of this one. But I worked at Charles Schwab for about a year. By the way, if you ever want to cyber, if you want to take them out, just hit Phoenix, Arizona. They have both their data centers within 30 miles of each other. Great planning. Anyway, so they've used Vital QIP for years for DDI. And, if you're not familiar with that term, it's DNS, DHCP, and IP address management. So they've used QIP for a lot of years, and they decided, hey, this new Infobox thing looks great. Let's go ahead and do it. You know, because just like every other shop, they had static DNS servers and DHCP actual servers, physical servers, and they saw Infobox had these appliances, and so they bought into the whole product, and things were going for it. I mean, the transition was smooth, everything looked great. Then all of a sudden, Schwab.com just goes poof, unavailable, 500 server error. Actually, it was more. It was worse than that. We couldn't find the DNS entry for Schwab.com because somehow that database entry had gotten corrupted. There was a duplicate DNS entry that got inserted, and it blew up the system. So several hours later, they're forcing Infoblox to give them their proprietary NIOS root password to unlock the box and correct that database entry. So I guess the moral of that story is make sure before you buy into the product that the company that provides it is able to actually not have duplicate entries or database corruption, or you have a serious backup that you can bring up right away. Anyway, so that was kind of fun. They went back to Vital QIP, and I think everything's okay. Now, this is nothing about Wells Fargo. Again, I had a whole different talk planned for you, but because of recent events you may or may not have heard about, they have honestly, they have nothing to do with anything technical. It was all the business side, business decisions for things that have happened. But on a positive note, their CEO, I guess former now, I don't know if it's public or not, so if I tell you something that's not public, don't say anything. It's public. John Stumpf has stepped down as CEO, but before that, the leader of the community banking, which is where that happened, stepped down or was forcibly stepped down because of recent incidents. Anyway, I just wanted to read this little quote. Our objective has always been and continues to be to meet our customers' financial needs and drive customer satisfaction. So the former CEO, we are eliminating product sales goals, which they have as of, I think, early October 1st, I think. They were going to start beginning of the year, but now they've started it now, and they're, I guess, deciding next year what to do for sales goals. Anyway, because we want to make certain our customers have full confidence that our retail bankers are always focused on the best interests of our customers. So there's the link, and I have that link in the slide that I provided. Doing on the conference, so that should be downloadable. And I grabbed most of the stories. I've got a few more links, some more funny stories, and I'll upload this as soon as I figure out how to do that. And I don't know, you may or may not have heard, but October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I had to grab that photo because I forgot. I forget how to say that. Anyways, there's some links here that you can use to gain more information about cybersecurity awareness. You know, coming to conferences like this are awesome. And if you've heard any of the other previous talks, I think they've done an awesome job on educating us as, you know, citizens and users and others of technology. That's it. And anyone have any comments, questions, tomatoes? Throw them up. Otherwise, I think we're just about done. All right. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed at least part of the talk. I heard a couple laughs, I think. I don't know if they were intentional or not, or directed towards me, but thank you, and enjoy the rest of the conference.